Ever wonder how a nation's story gets written? It's often told through its heroes, but here's the thing, they aren't always who you'd expect. Today, we're going to dive into how four very different kinds of heroes help forge the identity of modern Indonesia.
All right, so let's start with the big question, right? What really makes someone a national hero?
Is it that classic image that pops into your head? The brave warrior, maybe a prince, leading huge armies into battle.
Or could it be something totally different, like an intellectual, a young woman taking on centuries of tradition, not with a sword, but with her words?
Or how about this? An artist, someone who somehow manages to unite an entire people with just a song. Well, the amazing thing is, the answer is all of them. The story of Indonesia's independence, it was written by every single one. And even though their struggles looked completely different on the surface, they were all pointing in the exact same direction.
Okay, so let's kick things off with that warrior prince we mentioned. Meet Pangeran Diponegoro and his epic struggle, which would go down in history as the Java War. But here's the thing, to really get deep on Agoro, you first have to understand this incredibly powerful idea called the Ratu Adil. It was this ancient Javanese belief, almost like a prophecy, about a mythical, just king who would show up one day to free everyone from suffering and bring back a golden age. And let me tell you, this idea, it was like pouring gasoline on a fire for his rebellion.
So you might be asking, why was everyone so ready for a just king to show up? Well, you have to picture what was happening. The Dutch were meddling in local politics, leasing out Javanese land to foreigners, and basically turning proud farmers into laborers for pennies. Society was fraying at the seams. And then along comes Diponegoro, and the people look at him and think, this is him. This is the guy from the prophecy.
And when the war finally broke out, man, it was huge. In 1825, Diponegoro basically says, I am the Ratu Adil, and the fight is on. And it wasn't just him. We're talking farmers, nobles, religious leaders, even women commanders all joining the cause. The Dutch were so threatened, they came up with this strategy called the Benteng Stelsel. It's a fortress system. They built all these little forts to cut him off and just squeeze the rebellion to death. And after 5 long, brutal years, it finally ended when Diponegoro was captured, not in battle, but with what sources called guns and trickery, while he was trying to negotiate peace.
And the cost is just staggering to think about. We're talking over 200,000 Javanese lives lost. This wasn't just some small uprising. This was one of the biggest, bloodiest anti-colonial wars in the history of the region. A really tragic, but absolutely foundational moment of resistance.
So that's the story of resistance in Java. But at the same time, that same spirit was burning hot in other parts of the archipelago. So now let's hop over to Aceh in Sumatra to meet a totally different kind of warrior, the incredible guerrilla leader Cut Nyak Dien.
Her story really starts with this immense personal tragedy that she forged into just unbreakable resolve. See, her husband was also a resistance leader, and when he was killed fighting the Dutch, she didn't just mourn him. No way. She vowed revenge and literally took his place, leading the guerrilla army herself.
And what a fight she led. For years, she commanded her forces from deep in the remote jungles. But as she got older, her health started to fail. I mean, she was dealing with arthritis, she could barely see, her troops were dwindling, they had no supplies, and yet she just kept fighting. She would not give up. And in the end, it wasn't a Dutch soldier who brought her down. It was betrayal. One of her own commanders, who apparently couldn't stand to see her suffer anymore, gave up her location to the Dutch. And if you want to understand the kind of person she was, just listen to this quote. After her husband died, she supposedly turned to her own crying child and said this, "As Achenese women, we must not shed tears on people who have died as martyrs." Wow. I mean, that's the kind of steel, the kind of resolve that built her legend. It's a spirit of defiance that the Dutch just could not stamp out.
So, we've seen these massive wars fought with swords and guerrilla tactics, creating these legendary martyrs. But now, we're going to shift gears completely. We're going to look at a revolution fought with a totally different weapon. This is a war of ideas, and it was led by Raden Ajeng Kartini.
And honestly, her own words kick this off perfectly. A woman whose mind has been educated and whose perspective has been broadened will no longer be able to live within the world of her ancestors. I mean, that's not just a nice thought. That is a declaration of war on the way things were.
So what was this world of her ancestors she was talking about? Well, for women, it was a world of Penjitan,
where young noblewomen were literally secluded from the world from puberty until they were forced into an arranged marriage. A world of forced polygamy and a world where higher education for women, that was just out of the question. Cartini's vision was the exact radical opposite. Education, freedom for women to choose their own path, their own partners, true autonomy.
So how do you fight a system like that? Well, her weapons weren't swords. They were letters. She kept up this incredible correspondence with friends in the Netherlands, and she used her pen like a scalpel to dissect the injustices that Javanese women faced. She was passionately arguing for a new way forward. For her, it was simple. If you educate a woman, you educate an entire nation.
And here's the tragic irony. She was ultimately forced into the very life she fought so hard against, a polygamous marriage. And she died so young, at just 25, right after giving birth. But her ideas, they were unstoppable. Her letters were eventually published in a book called From Darkness into Light, and it became a Bible for Indonesia's new women's movement. It directly inspired the creation of Kartini schools all across the islands.
Okay, so we've had a war of swords and a war of ideas. Now for our final hero, who kind of brings it all together. The man who gave this growing national feeling its voice, its soul, Weiji Rudolf Supratman.
Supratman was a man of many talents, for sure. A journalist, a teacher, but his real gift was music. He looked around at all these different movements for independence, and he realized they were missing something crucial. They didn't just need leaders, they needed a single unifying sound.
And then came the moment. It's 1928, at the Second Indonesian Youth Congress. You've got all these young nationalists there from Java, Sumatra, all over. Supratman gets up on stage and plays his new song, Indonesia Raya, on his violin. And the effect was electric. I mean, imagine it. For the very first time, all these different groups heard a song that actually named their shared dream, Indonesia. The song spread like wildfire. Future leaders like Sukarno adopted it immediately. It was so powerful, so good at making the idea of a unified nation feel real, that the Dutch banned it just 2 years later. That's when you know a song is as revolutionary as an army. So let's just pull this all together for a second. Think about it. You've got Diponegoro and Kutnyak Dien, the warriors. They created the bedrock story of heroic armed struggle. Then you've got Kartini, the thinker. She argued that a new nation needed new, enlightened people, especially its women. And finally, you have Supratman, the artist. He took all that history of struggle and all those new ideas and gave them a unifying anthem. The warrior, the thinker, the artist. You see? You need all of them to forge the single idea of one nation.
Which kind of brings us to our final thought here. A nation's story is written by its heroes. The ones with the swords, the ones with the pens, and the ones with the songs. Their chapters are done, so the real question for us today is, who's writing the next one?